Now we have a gentleman who is a rare treat. We have Mr. W.B. Ward, and having worked as a mentalist, he discovered that his effects were often based on tricks by con men. Well, we don't know any of them, do we? To swindle honest people from their hard-earned cash. Beach. Using his craft as a springboard, Mr. Ward began researching various schemes to defraud unwitting victims, and he has compiled his findings into a book called Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? And other popular cons, along with suggested defenses against each con. W.B. Ward has worked in various fields of the entertainment industry, including music, radio, television, theater, concerts, carnivals. So haven't I. We have a great deal in common here. And professional wrestling. So without any further ado, Mr. W.B. Ward. Good morning, W.B.
Good morning. It's my pleasure. I'm a little hoarse, but hey, let's make it happen, Captain.
Oh, we can do it. Let's go into action. Want to tell? I just gave the listeners a brief critique of about you and your mentalist stuff and
pro wrestling matches.
Pro wrestling.
I was going to say that, by the way.
What'd you say?
I said I knew you were going to say that, by the way.
You did.
Okay. Well, that's part of being a mentalist. I mean, you got to be on top of the game.
We're kind of slow today. We were with our cousin JB last night. That's probably why we're a little bit slow.
You have an awesome bio, by the way, WB. You have a really cool bio. Like, you have done some of the coolest stuff when I was reading it over. I think that's pretty fascinating. I love the mentalist stuff, too. I'm really fascinated by that stuff.
That's Mitch Stinson, by the way.
I got to tell you, when I first got into that, I was very disappointed because I was looking for one thing, and I found something just completely out of left field. But once I started learning it, it was just like, hey, this is kind of cool.
Did you watch that show, The Mentalist, with Patrick Jane there on NBC? That was kind of cool. I mean, they kind of just intro a little bit of it, but it was pretty interesting stuff.
Actually, I never saw that.
Really?
Oh, no kidding.
WB, it was a great show.
What did you do in the circus?
Watched me a few times, though.
What did you watch? I'm sorry.
I said I think they watched me a few times.
Probably did.
Yeah, they probably picked up all their tricks. You should have watched. They're probably doing your life.
Yeah. Would have brought back memories.
What did you do in the circus?
Well, about the same thing I did in radio. About the only difference was I used a shovel instead of a microphone.
You got that one. I worked in carnivals just like you did.
And radio.
And radio. All by life.
Since you worked in carnivals, were you ever familiar with a show called The Globe of Death?
No, that one, no.
Oh, tell us about it.
Tell us about it. That's intriguing.
That's the show that I started in, and that featured a pair of motorcyclists inside of a steel globe. It's called the
now I know what you're talking
family.
About. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think Ringling now owns that act now, and I was really proud to be there near the beginning stage of that particular show. So that's one of my feathers in my cap that I'm really proud of.
Mitch remembers.
Oh God, yeah! I remember going to the circus and watching those guys in that ring, or that it was like a big steel ball,
yeah.
And I kept waiting. And like I was one of those awful kids that go to the circus. Like anytime they get up on the trapeze, I close my eyes, or anytime they start doing anything crazy, I close my eyes.
You a Navy pilot?
Yeah, I know. But you know what though? It's amazing the performance. I mean, you must have some pretty cool insight on the amount of work that goes into those acts, the practicing and all that stuff.
Oh, man, I mean, you start working from the time you wake up in the morning, and you're not finished until the last piece of wood is sawed into after sundown. I mean, it's constant hard work from sun up to sundown. There's never a break in the action. But I got to tell you, it's something you love to do, and when you're doing it, you really don't realize you're working. And when you're through at the end of the day, you wipe your brow, you sit down for dinner, which for me at that time usually consisted of 2 conies and a chocolate milk. I was satisfied. I was very happy with the day.
But you got to travel to all sorts of cool places. I mean, you obviously hitting town to town to town. Were you guys by rail, or did you run by truck?
I was in a truck. train.
Oh, no kidding.
I was in a train. Yeah, that was kind of fun. And most of the time, I had no idea what city I was in, because really, you stop and think about it, there was really no reason for me to know.
Right.
Usually, the only time that I ever really knew what city I was in was if I just happened to spot a newspaper lying around somewhere, and then that was kind of touch and go because you never knew if you were seeing an out of town newspaper. So I've been in most of the major arenas around the country at one time or another. I just never really knew which one I was in at any given moment.
That's amazing. And you play 30 instruments?
Well, yes, but don't read too much into that. I started playing when I was about 4 years old. I started playing piano. Later on, I began to teach myself cello. And from that point on, I started learning what one instrument had in common with other instruments. Like, for instance, as cello, I found out with violin and viola, we're all tuned the same in perfect fifths. Different pitches, but perfect fifths nonetheless. So I was able to pick up on those two instruments. A mandolin was tuned exactly like a violin, so the fingering would transfer over. The keyboard from the piano was the same as the keyboard of an organ, or marimba, or an accordion, or what. And really, when it all stacks up, I just found out what one instrument had in common with about 8 or 9 other instruments. So yes, by the time the end of the day got there, I was playing about 30 instruments and stuff. But it wasn't because I was some kind of musical prodigy. It's just because I was bored at one time, and I just figured out what a lot of had in common.
You were smart.
I'll tell you what, man. If you might not, you downplay yourself on that, but anybody can do that. You've got more skill and talent than you know, because I swear to you, I couldn't play anything if you paid me a lot of money. I just can't do it. I don't have it.
But you can lend a...
Actually, my musical lesson started with my late older brother, whom was 3 years older than I. And I'll never forget it because I was 4 years old at the time. We were over at my Aunt Sissy's house. My older brother sat down and played a one-finger melody of a song called "Come Thy Fount of Every Blessing." And man, I'm telling you what, my mom and my grandma and my Aunt Sissy were about ready to put that kid up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Boy, that ticked me off.
That motivated you?
That. So I sat down at the piano, and I didn't get up until I learned how to play a few songs. By golly, I wanted some of that attention, too.
Pretty determined.
I never went back to the piano, but I just never quit.
WB, I know you have a fabulous voice because you do audiobooks. I'm sorry, do you have a cold? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I just got over a really bad virus a couple of days ago, so I apologize for the voice. I do rough. I sound rougher than sandpaper on an old lady on a
No.
Well, okay, Dan Cottonelle, huh? All right.
I think it's pretty cool to do audiobooks. I mean, you got a great voice for it. I would keep that cold. It sounds good. I don't even have a cold. I sound like that.
The audiobooks are really, really cool to do because I sit in a little vocal studio all day and I read novels that authors send me to put on in the form of audio, and it is really awesome. And I'm getting ready in about a week and a half. I'm going to turn 57 years old, and if there's any lesson that I've learned is sitting in what's called a whisper studio doing a book. It's amazing how many sounds come from the human body after you hit 56.
Yes, it is. Yes.
They have the editing program.
Creak and what have you.
Yeah, every sound.
Do you read the book like a couple times before you actually record, or do you kind of just get in there and go first shot and see where it goes?
I read through it once looking for dialects and hard to pronounce words,
right,
and things like this. I just recently did one on Edgar Allan Poe. My God, that kid must have ate a thesaurus when he was really young.
Yeah, he's a pretty smart dude.
WB,
Go
ahead.
Yes.
I think we might be playing something from Edgar Allan Poe if our Chris the Wonder Boy, if the computer works, we're going to play.
If Chris can be a wonder boy, he'll be able to do
He's
it.
pretty wonderful on the Oldie show, that's for sure. Let's see if he can do it in the daytime.
Yeah, we're good to go. So we're going to play your Edgar Allan
We're going to
Poe.
play Edgar Allan Poe by W.B. Ward.
True. Very and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
WB, you're from Oklahoma, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have pretty lousy weather and a lot of earthquakes, true?
There's never a dull moment here. Let me tell you something. When the wind is blowing over 50 miles an hour, the thunder is crashing, lightning flashing, hail throwing down, and the ground begins to shake, you begin reevaluating your life real quick.
I've been to Oklahoma. It's the most beautiful state. I absolutely love Oklahoma. And, in my flying days, I think the worst weather I ever flew through in my life, I got caught in a line of thunderstorms down through there, which WB is just talking about. And it was the scariest moment of my life, literally, the 80,000-foot tops and throwing hail and tornadoes and everything else. Pretty intense. But it only lasts till like June, right? And then out of June, you're pretty good.
Well, that used to be the case. This is something that can happen year-round. One of our worst tornadoes on record happened on December 21st in 1977, I believe it was.
You're right. December. That's crazy, too. I lived in Mississippi, and I remember throwing my kids in the bathtub a few times.
Really?
That's a pretty nerve-wracking experience, yeah.
Yeah, if you're at your home, that's a good place to go. It would be in the restroom, believe it or not.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people do here.
Do you have a storm shelter, WB?
No, and I was just getting ready to say it amazes me, having been born and raised here, how many people do not have storm shelters.
Right.
Now, strong rooms and things like that are starting to become really in style now. So
yeah.
I'm hoping more and more people will have them.
And you have more earthquakes than any other state, isn't that true?
That is what I've heard.
Yeah.
We had our first earthquake-free day. I think it was one day last week, and it was the first day in over several months.
What are they, like small little tremors?
Yeah, they're not very big. Most of the people on the West Coast would probably laugh at us if we told them what our earthquakes were like. But, when you're not used to getting them and all of a sudden your house begins to shake and things are falling off the shelves, it's an eye-opener.
Wow.
Yeah, we had one in Maine. Was it last year? Do you guys remember the one in New Hampshire?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because I remember sitting. It's funny you talk about not really being associated with earthquakes, and we were sitting up here, and all of a sudden it felt like a helicopter was landing on my roof. It really freaked me out, and then I found out it was an earthquake later.
One of the scariest things that happened to me and Nancy last September, was it, or October, when we got that alert on the television to go to the basement.
Oh, that's right.
I've lived here all my life, more or less. I've been in California a couple of times, but, it was really spooky, WB. The emergency broadcast system come on, and it comes on every week as a test, and being in broadcasting, we all know that that's required. But this time it was a real thing, and we live in Winchester, Massachusetts, which is about 7 miles north of Boston. So it's a little bedroom community. But
right.
It's not far from the Boston, and the TV come on, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden come on, this is not a test. This is a real emergency. Go to your base. We have a basement, fortunately. We live in a condominium. Go to your basement immediately. And at first, I'm saying to Nancy, it's nothing. And then they kept well, we never had that, so
right.
It's stupidity on my behalf,
Well, you're not used to it.
Right. So I says, and then I says, knowing that I'm Irish and knowing that my luck is not good, let's go to the basement. We took our cats and we went to the basement and we stayed there about a half an hour, wasn't it?
And we did.
And it was spooky. Nothing happened, but right up the street, something did hit.
Yeah.
About 2
Was it a tornado?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it never did that before.
In Oklahoma, man, I just remember those storms. Man, They get big storms.
It looks scary.
Yeah, it
like
does.
that's
Scary. Yeah.
I can't imagine what it is in Oklahoma. Those the black clouds covering it.
Yeah, and it just lights up the whole. I mean, WB should be telling us this
Yeah.
story.
Well, one thing that really scares me to death, I'm really kind of, believe it or not, I'm used to the tornadoes. Those you can kind of avoid. They're kind of last minute, that's true, but you have enough wherewithal around you to look around and see what's going on, and you can dodge them. What scares me to death is the hail.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen the great big stuff that you see on the
Huge.
things like that. But the biggest one I've ever seen personally was about the size of a softball.
Really?
These things will penetrate cars.
Oh, yeah.
If you're wearing a football helmet, you wouldn't stand a chance.
Really?
So that scares me to death. hail is just unbelievably scary.
And they show the pictures of the cars too, WB, of the cars just getting trashed by hail. I flew through a hailstorm one time, and I lost an engine because of it. Yeah, because it beat up the compressors in the engine, and thank God the other one was still working. But I can't imagine, because you figure this, if you're, side of baseball, softball, even a golf ball, I mean, that's dangerous. Have you ever been caught in one, WB? Ever been out in it?
Yes, I have. I used to fly a Piper Cherokee.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and we were flying one time, and I saw this great big old anvil right in front of us.
Yeah.
I started to head for it, and I could see my instructor's knuckles turning white.
Yeah. My knuckles are turning white. You're just telling me the story.
They are, WB.
So I decided I would err on the side of caution, and I would follow my instructor's lead and veered away from it. And we flew at right angles to the storm cloud. And of course, we managed to dodge it. But he said, "Man, don't ever do that to me again."
Well, you know what a lot of people don't realize, and you've got an aviation background, so you know this as well. But you get alongside some of those storms, they're throwing hail 80 miles away from the storm. You get some,
really?
Yeah.
Well, listen, there is nothing that's localized about a thunderstorm.
Right.
When Moore, Oklahoma, was virtually wiped off the map a couple of years ago.
I remember that.
Moore, Oklahoma is roughly, I would say it's almost 200 miles from where I live. Mm-hmm. And we were finding debris from that storm in our yard.
Unbelievable.
It will throw hail, it will throw sticks, it will throw personal belongings. There were stories all over the place where people were finding mementos of other families in their backyards, like as far as 200 or 300 miles away, and they were able to trace down who owned them, and they were getting them back to the rightful owners. So when you're flying, the story's no different. There's no telling what kind of debris you're going to pick up on a small aircraft if you're trying to fly around.
Oh God, yeah.
So don't be an idiot like me and try to fly right into. You'll be getting into
the last flight I took before I got my wings. We ran in. I was down in Laredo, Texas, and we ran into a line of thunderstorms, and we were stuck. We had nowhere to go, so we had to go through it. I was in a Beechcraft King Air at the time, and I remember my instructor pilot just looking at me, and he's like, "Here we go. We got no choice. Hang on."
Was it awful?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, that taught me at a very young age. Like you with your instructor, you learn don't go near those things if you can avoid them.
How long were you in that storm?
20 hours, it felt like.
Well, yeah, it felt like a daytime, but it was like a 20 minutes where I couldn't even read the instruments. I mean, I remember at one point our altitude was changing anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 feet in a second. God. You'd be pulling G's and then negative G's, just getting up and down drafts. I mean, those storms are huge down there. Oklahoma is a gorgeous, gorgeous state too. It's
flat.
It is.
It's got some nice contour to it.
Okay.
I loved having been raised here. I mean, I feel like this is God's country. I mean, I'm in northeast Oklahoma, so I'm at the foothills of the Ozarks. We have no mountains here, but just some of the most beautiful pastoral countrysides that you could ever see. I'm very proud to say that I'm from Oklahoma, and I live in Tulsa specifically, and I just love every minute of it.
Sounds beautiful.
I got into a great fist fight in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Let's hear about that one. I like these stories
with
behind
Madonna.
the story.
Madonna wasn't there. Yeah, she would have kicked my butt. Well, Tinker Air Force Base is right in Tulsa, I believe. Is it not, WB?
No, Tinker's in Oklahoma City.
Okay, that's where I got into a fight.
You remember that more than Madonna.
Because I was a Navy guy, and that was an Air Force base, and we went in there, and we were kids. I mean, we were like, I'm 30 years old, and we're arguing about whose airplane's better. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do.
We're in the bathroom, had a couple of cocktails in us.
It's a male
Next
thing.
thing you know, we're punching each other. Your plane sucks. No, your plane sucks. But Oklahoma, man, I have great memories of Oklahoma. Other than that one storm I flew through.
Oh, God. So, WB, let's go back to your audiobooks. How do you do
audiobooks?
Yes, how do you do female characters?
Yeah, I don't even try.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, because one of the things that would just be insulting to a listener would be all of a sudden for me to go up into a falsetto and sound like I'm molesting Minnie Mouse over the reading. So the best thing that I can possibly do is try to get the proper inflection into the voice to reflect the mood and the paragraph and the scene in which I'm portraying, and just simply rely on the tags the author wrote in, like, when are you going to take this garbage up? She demanded, and things like that, rather than try to change.
You
the
can.
voice
Do you
and all.
soften your voice? Oh, you can soften your voice, right? Like if I noticed, I've heard some audiobooks where they just soften their voice a little bit because you got like a pretty low voice too.
Yeah. Sure, I'll do that. I've heard people record audio books and try to do transgender voices and things like that. And I'm sorry, to me it just doesn't work. As a listener, to me it's insulting because I sit here and think, okay, I know this. I'm supposed to have this suspension of disbelief here and stuff like this, but when you're going to do stuff like that, that's just blatantly phony. It's just not going to work for me. It's like hearing somebody trying to do an Oklahoma accent who really doesn't understand what an Oklahoma accent is like.
Right.
You can spot that they stand out like a cockroach on a white carpet. And
I love it. Yeah.
How creative. WB, I think we have a Christmas carol we're going to play right now.
Cool. That's one of my favorite ones.
Good. Here we go. I hope. Well, here goes Chris the Wonder Boy. He's looking pretty handsome.
Silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so?"
Oh, that's simply amazing.
What a voice.
What a voice, WB.
I travel a lot. I love audiobooks.
I do,
Yeah.
too.
A good voice like that. I mean, and I just come back from Texas. I was driving the whole way. I listened to a book the whole way, and it's just amazing.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have to
Well,
take?
go on to audible.com and search for WB Ward. You'll see like 20 titles there.
I plan on it.
Well, WB, that's what I was about to ask you, too. If anybody wants to purchase any of your materials, hire you, or whatever, do you have a website?
Yeah, the best place to go for just all-over coverage for my career is my website, which it was just so amazing. I was able to find one that had my name to it, and that's WBWard.com. I thought that was wonderful the way that worked out.
Ah, perfect. Gift from the gods. And how's it going with Ward's Almanac? I know that you were doing that on stations across the country. Are you still doing that?
Yes, I am, and I'm very proud to say I'm being carried now by the United, the Military Armed Forces Network. So they're carrying me around in 120 countries around the world.
That's awesome.
To our America's heroes, and that to me is one of the biggest honors I think I've ever had in my life.
That's great. Congratulations.
How do we get it? How could we get that, WB?
If you guys would like to carry the program, it runs for 2 solid minutes, and it's a glorified this day in history with a lot of trivial things in it that are just really interesting, like the day that the beer pump handle was invented. One of my greatest finds I ever had. This is in one of my books of a lady by the name of Essie Mae Phillips, I believe was her name, and she's holding a check in front of her mailbox, and what she's holding was the very first Social Security check ever issued to anybody. She had check number 1. Things like that. So if you guys would like to carry the program, hey, send me an email. I'll be glad to give you the information.
Why don't you, when we're through with the interview, give Chris the Boy Wonder your phone number, and he'll give you mine, and I'll talk to you during the week about that. How's that?
That sounds like a plan, Stan.
Great.
So, WB, people can go to WBWard.com and find out more about you. You're one of the most interesting men.
Great website.
Yeah, it is a great.
You've been a great
Thank
guest.
you.
And
Come back.
come back again soon, okay?
I would love to. And Jim and your lovely wife, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And
Thanks,
talk to me
WB.
during the week, okay? Chris, take
All
that
right, sir.
call off the air. Okay, that was
All right.
Mr. W.B. Ward.
Thank you.
And he is one great guy. I'd like to purchase that Christmas Carol
It's a great thing.
for
I will.
Christmas.
We'll go on WBWard.com and do it.
That's a
Great.
soothing voice he has.
Isn't it? What is
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I was in a trance. It was just kind of putting me to sleep. It was like
I didn't
going
notice the
into the
difference.
night.
Oh, Nancy's getting funny now.
Nancy.
Mike wants to audition for the female voices, 'cause he can raise his voice.
Yes.
Let's
You
hear
want to
it.
give us an
The
audition?
octave? No, I couldn't. You know what? I couldn't do it. I couldn't imagine it. He was talking about changing the voice. That would be...
His underwear's not tight enough. He
Well,
uses
you get the
cotton
right
now.
size
I've been going
underwear that's
commandos
too
since
tight.
day
You'll be able to change it quite quickly.
Yeah.
And now I think we're going to have a break.
Okay, this is 1510 WMEX. We're strolling along on this Memorial Day weekend with this edition of Fireside. We'll be back in just a minute or two. Stick and stay, and we got more to come as we roll down the Memorial Day weekend. Tongue-tied.
Call Jim and Nancy at 617-237-1234. This is the WMEX Fireside Radio Network.